Hi there, welcome to the Open Tent podcast with Anjani Amrit and Robin Wald. And this is one of our first podcast recordings that we're making. And I'm very excited because what we're doing today is we're going to be interviewing Robin, or I'm going to be interviewing Robin, and I'm going to be finding out more about her because, quite frankly, I don't know very much about Robin, even though we're setting up this podcast together. We don't really know each other, and we live on the opposite sides of the planet from each other. So, first of all, I want to start out with saying thank you, Robin, for being willing to be interviewed and share all of your personal stories.
I don't know if I'm sharing all of my personal stories, but I'm very happy to be here and be interviewed by you today. Thank you.
So, tell me a little bit about yourself. Like, how did you get to be where you are today?
Hmm. Okay, so I think that as a child, I wouldn't have used these words when I was a child, but now
Mm.
looking backwards, when I look over my life, I think I always was wisdom seeking.
Mm.
So I was an ordinary child and playful and whatever, but I always loved to learn. And I
Mm.
always loved to learn deep spiritual things. I guess that's weird for a child, maybe. I don't know. But I loved thinking about God. I loved learning prayers. I loved wondering about my soul and what happens at night. And I would have these dreams where I would be flying and I knew that I was outside of my body and I would just sense things and I trusted that. And then I would probably say that there was a period of time as a teenager and maybe where I stopped trusting that or learned to trust other people outside of me more than I trusted myself, and maybe lost touch with that inner wisdom and always seeking outwardly for more wisdom, more wisdom, more wisdom, which led me to study yoga and led me to study Buddhism and led me to study Kabbalah, led me to study astrology and to study with the best yoga teachers on the planet and to go to conferences and always seeking wisdom. And for a long time, seeking wisdom outside of myself. And I think it took me really into late adulthood to come back and really say, oh, wow, I have read enough and know enough. Not that that stops me. I still always like read and learn and listen to other people's podcasts. Definitely a lifelong learner. And to also say, but I have enough within when I just come back into my own home, into my own heart, into my soul, into my own mind, and all of what's stored there to really, really, have a deep connection to my own knowing. So I think that's been a big part of what I do then in the world. So I teach. I love to teach. I teach children. I teach teenagers. I teach adults. I teach elderly adults. I like the whole spectrum. And I'm a certified coach and I'm an astrologer and I'm a yoga teacher. So I've very gratefully have found a way to integrate all of these paths and all of this learning I've done and all of what I'm passionate about and to bring it all together in kind of interesting, unique ways for multiple different audiences as a way of being of service.
Beautiful. I love that. It's so different to my story, which we're not getting into, but I love that you had that inner ability, that inner awareness right from a very early age. I know some people do, but a lot actually don't. And so I feel like you were really blessed, when you growing up to have that awareness. Now, I'm aware that you are residing in New York
I
or
am.
thereabouts. Tell me a little bit about something about New York that you love that really supports you and what you do. Just one thing.
So where I grew up was a little place called Seagate, which is part of Brooklyn. I know Brooklyn's very hip and very big in the world now. You see people wearing Brooklyn swag when they've never been in Brooklyn, but I'm like real OG, born and bred Brooklyn. But I lived at the very edge of Coney Island in this tiny little community called Seagate. You've heard of Coney Island? Do you know
Yes,
what
of
that is?
course.
Yes.
Oh, in
Okay.
all the movies.
Yes. Okay. This is where I grew up. This is my hometown. But I grew up by the ocean. I lived across the street from the ocean, and my whole childhood, my friends and I would play at each other's houses, play in the street, all kinds of games, but we would walk right to the beach and spent our childhood on the beach. And the ocean, you know, like the energy of the ocean is something very mystical, something very profound. There's an energy that is really palpable, and there's something very cosmic about it and womb like about it. And I once led a meditation. I'm getting off topic for a second, but I once led a meditation in a yoga class, which was about finding yourself at the end of your life and surrounding yourself with all the people that you want to thank and be grateful for and say goodbye to and come to completion with. And at the end of the meditation, we sat and we kind of talked about our experiences. And every single person in that room, and there were about 20 people there, all found themselves by the ocean on a beach. It was like very eye opening to me. Like, that's not an accident that everybody somehow found themselves on a beach surrounded by their friends in the so anyway, I grew up at the ocean, and it's been a big part of who I am. I remember my whole teenage life, I would go to sit on the beach to study all times of year, bundled up, and I would just there was something very rhythmic, very the prana, the energy of it, that kind of helped me to decompress, let go of my stress, come back into a sense of like, there's something much bigger than me in this universe. And that perspective of like feeling small, but also being present in your life in something very grand is magical. So I'm very grateful for that. Right now I live in Ossining, New York, which is in the Hudson River Valley. And so I'm not by the ocean anymore, but I'm across the road from the Hudson River. And I have Hudson River views. And every morning I get up and I walk along the river. And it's just also something about being near a natural body of water and the flow of that energy is really special to me.
Yeah, I mean, living in accordance with and in line with and in alignment with the natural flow of nature is something that I think a lot of us are very disconnected from. When we live in cities and we've grown up in cities, I did not grow up in Coney Island near a beach or anything like that. And in fact, I grew up near a railway. And so that concretized conditioning that we often have can really disconnect us from nature, and it's nature that brings us the profound, I think. And it sounds like you had such a profound upbringing and are still connected. So I really I agree with you. You are blessed, and I think it's beautiful, and it's nice to hear that from someone, because it's usually the opposite of that. And I wonder if Coney Island, because my knowledge of Coney Island comes from movies, and you always see the fairground. So do you think that might have had an influence on the work that you do today? Because I know a big part of the work that you do is helping people bring fun and play and creativity into their lives to support them. So do you think that influenced you somehow? And how do you bring that flavor into the work that you do today?
That's such an interesting question. I thought you were going to go somewhere else with that. Um, so Coney Island, what you see in the movies, it's interesting because when I was growing up, Coney Island was not necessarily a safe place. There was a lot of crime and violence, and we didn't have free reign to like just go and spend time in Coney Island without supervision. It didn't feel safe necessarily. And I was terrified of rides. So my older brother and my younger sister loved roller coasters, and they would go on the Cyclone, and they would go on these, the crazy roller coasters. And they once convinced me to go on a ride. They were like, no, you won't be scared. This will be really fun. I was terrified and so miserable. I was like, how could you do this to me? So my idea of fun wasn't really about speed or being thrown around or risk or anything like that. But growing up in Seagate was like this little safe enclave where our friends, we had open doors all day long. We would be at someone's house. This is before cell phones. Our parents just knew and trusted that other parents are looking out for us if we needed. We would be in each other's homes. We all grew up with like, open door, just spend time and, from morning to night. And we would be out in the street riding our bikes and playing games and taking walks. And being on the beach and back. And there was a lot of freedom in that. And maybe the answer to your question is that that freedom like gave space for a lot of creativity. We would live in our imaginations and we would create games and we would just create like adventures for ourselves. And there was this sense that we were safe to do that. Like it was safe to explore and play, and that it was fun and we could problem solve and we could learn about ourselves and each other and role play and see things from other perspectives. And that I never really thought of this. I love that you're saying this. I also grew up in a household of kids. So there were 5 of us. So there was like, I have a lot of siblings and it was very noisy and very busy. So there was a lot of just play in the family dynamic. And then I also want to acknowledge another way I was blessed is that until I was 18, I had all 4 of my grandparents and they all lived in Brooklyn within 10 minutes of us. So I saw my grandparents every week and we would play. They were musical, they would sing, they would dance, we would play cards, they would teach us games. There was something about playfulness that was part of my childhood. And that's something I love about being a teacher. Even when I teach teenagers, I bring childish games into my teenage teaching because we're all children still, and that part of us needs to be nurtured. Right now, my favorite way to play is Mario Kart with my son. So he's 24 years old, but the 2 of us, we play Mario Kart and we have the most fun and we laugh. And it's just, play is so, so precious. Like life is serious enough. The world is serious enough. And we'll attend to those things as adults. We'll be responsible in our lives for all of those things and people and finances and our jobs. And all those responsibilities are important. And, right? And we don't have to lose connection to what brings us joy and what reminds us like that our spirit is alive on this planet and what a gift. And like, let's just have some fun with it too. Yeah. So I love that question. Thank you for asking that.
My absolute pleasure. Our lives are sounding very black and white right now. I'm just bathing in your play. I'm like, oh yeah, this is good. I'm really loving hearing it. It just sounds like this magical. And I know, obviously, you've had your ups and downs, and I think I'll ask a question about that next. But
Sure.
I love hearing that because for me that wasn't the case, and it wasn't safe. But there was no play either, and I agree with you that play is so vital, and having childlike fun, which is what I like to call it, childlike fun, is something that is a huge missing ingredient that allows us to really connect to ourself, our greater sense of wonder or joy, like you said. Then our passion and our deeper purpose keeps us connected. So I love that you were raised that way. I love that you bring that to your teachings, and you're certainly going to be bringing it to this podcast. So I'm excited for that.
Me too. Thank you.
Not, not to be a Debbie Downer, but I'm interested to hear about something that you've had in your life, some challenge that you had to overcome, some difficulty that you got through, and not just got through in gritting your teeth and holding your breath, but got through and learned something vital, or that it took you into a place where you wouldn't ordinarily would have ventured, and that ended up being a gift for you.
Yeah. So I think if you're human, you have those experiences, right? And this is why we're the Open Tent podcast, because everybody, your different background than mine, we're both here having these conversations, and all of our listeners have different backgrounds and experiences and their ups and downs and their challenges and the way they've risen to the occasion and met those challenges. So I think that that's a beautiful thing that we can learn from each other as well. For me, I'll say I got married very young, to my first love, my high school sweetheart, who I met when I was literally 12, was in love with him by 13, dated him through college. We got married. I was 22 years old. We had three beautiful children and a business together and a home and a life. And that all fell apart when I was 44. And, for a lot of reasons why marriages fail, like that's very personal. But, we made a decision that really we did not want to be together anymore in a marriage, and having to dissolve that and go through a divorce, which is very painful, emotionally for us as two adults, but also as parents who love their children. It's very painful to know that you're putting your children through that and that you can't protect them from whatever they're feeling and all of the pain of that. And then there were a lot of financial considerations of, we had a business together, we worked together, our finances were joint, and now you're splitting into two households. And there were a lot of, that was a moment for me of really having to reassess my entire life, because you have this vision or imagination or commitment that your life looks a certain way and it's going to continue, and there's a continuity. And then all of a sudden, that entire rug is swept out from under you, which is exciting because it's a brand new start, blank slate, but very terrifying to start again. So I had to re-envision my career path. I had to re-envision what it looked like to live alone, where I wanted that to be, what parts of myself I wanted to bring forth. I had to re-envision intimate relationship. Do I want to date? Who I want to date? What am I looking for? My relationship with my children. So, but the beauty and the gift of that was that I was only teaching part-time. I was teaching like 4 hours a week in a Jewish setting with teenagers, which I loved, spiritual teaching. And I was teaching yoga another maybe 4 or 5 hours a week with private clients. But the rest of my time was really managing his business and the household. So I was like, whoa, okay, now what? And I had to really go through, like, what do I want to do? And that's when I decided, and I was doing astrology, but more very small scale, like for friends and for friends of friends who sent them to me. And, I didn't even charge. It was like a gift because I loved it. And I was always learning with the astrology. So I was like, yeah, of course I'll read your chart. But I was like, wow, okay, this is my opportunity to actually create a career that is a true, honest expression of what I love, that I'm passionate about. And how can I monetize that legitimately and earn an income and support myself? So that was the impetus and the catalyst, like the dissolution of a 24-year marriage and a 28-year relationship. Saturn cycle. Hello, anybody who knows Saturn. It was a 28-year Saturn cycle of my relationship with my partner. And that was complete. It was complete. There was a lot of healing and things to get through to, kind of start over, but it was a new beginning. And I have to say that, wow, like I really am in love with my life. I'm in love with everything I've created. I love the work I do. I'm so grateful I got my International Coaching Federation, certified PCC coach. That's a huge accomplishment. Like that was a huge accomplishment. The education, the hours, the training, the ethics, the passing the exam, I mean, I feel so proud of myself that I was able to design my life. I still teach because I knew I love that. I'm doing the astrology professionally. I've gotten so good at it, from going from maybe doing 10 readings a year here and there to reading literally 10 readings a week, and understanding, like deeply, deeply understanding and integrating the language and the archetype of that. And I've created this wonderful life, for myself, with my kids, with my relationships. So yeah, blessings do happen, and change is hard. And it is about growth. It is about really aligning more and more authentically with what my life path was leading me towards at that point.
I think it takes a lot of courage to allow the dissolution. Often in our Western cultures, it's deemed as a midlife crisis. And I like to call it a midlife catalyst, because often it can be that opportunity for us to be liberated from the things that have been holding us back. I mean, look at what grew from that, in your midlife retraining, restudying, and all of that, establishing yourself as a woman, fully embodied in her power, is what that change allowed you to do. And so I do feel like anyone's listening who's going through that, have patience, and understand that this is a catalyst for something greater in your life. And it may not feel like it right now, but it always is. And just to let listeners know that Robin and I will be working with the general public, offering our services on the podcast. I'm super excited because Robin's going to be doing these astrology readings with the people who come on our podcast. And it's ordinary people, right? It's not celebrities and, whatever accolade wearing people. It's scientists. It's ordinary people that we are. A big part of what we're doing in the podcast is helping ordinary people really make change in their life. And I've had a reading with Robin, and it's one of the best readings I've ever had in my life. You are absolutely amazing. What is just one thing that people should know about an astrology reading that they might not know, that would help them understand why it's so vital or important to have in their life?
Yeah. I would say the thing I find most valuable about astrology readings for any individual, different than going on a CoStar app or going, to a horoscope, right? That's, first of all, at the very base, like, listeners should know that that is not an actual astrology reading, right? An astrology reading is very, very detailed, individualized, complex for the person, But to me, I think the most amazing thing about an astrology reading is how validating it is of your own life experience. It is not about me as the astrologer. My role is to translate all of these symbols and signs and archetypes into some meaningful story that resonates with your own life experience. But my job is also to listen to your life experience in response to that and say, oh, that is what da 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 da, or this is how I grew up, or this was my relationship, or this is the pattern I've noticed. And oh, wow, that explains why I've chosen this career. And I'm so excited to hear that this is in my chart, and that, wow, you're reading my 6th house and my 10th house and my North Node, and you're telling me it's all leading me to this at my highest. And I've always felt that and pursued that. And I never even knew why that was in me and why that called me. And so the number one experience that people have from a really good astrology reading is feeling validated about what they already know. This goes back to the thing about inner wisdom, right? That people have an inner knowing and wisdom, but so much in our culture teaches us to doubt that and to question ourselves and to think we're not enough, or we should be something else, or we should value something other than what we value, or that some aspects of our character or what we're interested in isn't acceptable or success, according to the paradigm of what success looks like to other people. And what I love about astrology, it is all about you as an individual soul and your unique attunements, yourself as an individual, uniquely here for your own purpose, mission. And when people hear that, it's like, oh yes, I have permission to just be me and accept all of the good and the challenging and the quirks and the strengths. And my superpowers don't have to be your superpowers, Anjani, right? And my struggles don't have to be your struggles. What's easy for me might be very challenging for you. And what I'm blessed at might not have looked like a blessing for you, but vice versa, right? I have a lot to learn from everything that you're good at and that you've experienced. And so I think that astrology gives people permission to really see themselves holistically and own all the parts of themselves and validate them and create meaning around it.
I couldn't agree more, because when I had the reading from you, I think we were about 2 minutes in and I lost the plot. I was just bawling my eyes out because of the validation that was coming from you in terms of where I was at with my life, what I was feeling like was coming down the pipe, but didn't really, had no other validation of it. And then for my whole life, the things that I've been struggling with. And I agree with you that validation piece, because I just realized listening to what you said, that living life in a Western society, there is zero validation for us as individuals. It's always, the message is always primed to, are you doing what everyone else is doing? Are you following the pack? Are you trendy? Are you trending? Are you in with the latest fashions? Are you doing what we're telling you what success is? And I think one of the vital pieces of information people need is about their uniqueness and what they came here to do, their purpose, which is always unique, always very individual. And I feel like that's really going to help a lot of people. Even just listening to someone getting a reading is it's enlightening in so many ways, and hearing other people be validated for who they really are also gives us permission. So I think it's going to be a very exciting part of our podcast that we are going to be sharing more about that later. But let me ask you, is there any one particular thing you wanted to share with our listeners today about you, about the work that you do before we wrap up today, that maybe they might not know about you, or they may think, wow, I would never have guessed that about Robin?
Well, I don't know what anybody would never have guessed about me. I'm a pretty open book generally, but um, so a few things came up as you were saying that. One is that um, I am a mother. I am a mother. I have 3 children, and that's been one of the most important things I've accomplished in my life. I love my kids, and I have great relationships with each of them. And so, one thing that's done for me being a mother is, as an astrologer, as a coach, I work with a lot of parents. I work with a lot of parents. And, a parent's wish for their child is really for their child to be healthy and safe and to grow into their own, into their own purpose in the world, right? To grow into their own spirit. And, I know a lot of people who come to me for astrology readings for their children so that they could be better parents to their individually unique child that is not just an extension or a replica of themselves. Like, parents have challenges with their kids, and they want a good parent is like, help me to understand my child, help me to understand myself, help me to understand our dynamic and what resources and strategies I might use so that we can be in better relationship. um, People also come to me for that with intimate relationships, with business partnerships, right? How do I understand myself and do my own work so that, and also create space where I can understand someone else and, kind of show up in the very best versions of ourselves in a supportive way. So that is something that is a big part of my work. And, we talked about play. We talked about that I teach. I do love being around teenagers. So I think most people do know this about me, but I'll say it again anyway. I just love people. I love learning people's stories. I love learning about people's uniqueness. And, so to me, every client that comes to me through coaching or astrology or yoga, but especially all the teens I teach year after year after year, and to watch them grow into their own sense of self and to take risks and to learn and to challenge ideas and to integrate complex, you know, worldviews and to be so thoughtful and to be on this mission of becoming. That's a very big theme for me, is like this process of becoming. We're not like one and done. We're not like, I exist and this is who I am. We're not stagnant beings. And that's, again, part of the purpose of this podcast and these conversations we're having when we bring experts on to talk to us about science and technology and health and spirituality and all kinds. It's like, it's because we are constantly evolving ourselves. We're not done. We're like, like, what other things might we consider to inspire us that can literally influence how we're evolving for ourselves in our own lives, in our relationships, but also how we're contributing to the planet, to the society, to the benefit and well-being of others. So to me, that's just what excites me and turns me on. I love to meet people because it's like, oh, what else can I learn here about this person, and how might I shift something about me just because of something about them? It's a beautiful dance.
Yes, they say that if we are eternally the student and the teacher, that is the best way that we can be fully fledged in life. And I think it also keeps us very humble, and it keeps us in gratitude and in able to understand and experience the profundity of life.
I love that.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
So, yes, did you want to?
No. I was going to say, like, one other thing that I know we've talked that we're going to share on this podcast is wisdom from a lot of different traditions. That's also part of why we came up with this name, the open tent, because whatever your religious tradition, whatever your spiritual tradition, whatever your beliefs, whatever your philosophies, whatever your politics, like, this is a place where we can all just be introduced, to wisdom teachings. And each of us as an individual can say, oh, wow, that really resonates to me, with me. Or we could say, I don't really quite, that doesn't fit with my worldview or with my values or with my ethic or with what I learned, back in, Catholic school or whatever. That's fine. That's fine. So actually, when you were saying that you're teaching about the being the master and the teacher, what was going through my mind was a quote from Lao Tzu and a quote from Pirkei Avot and like other ancient wisdom teachings that speak to this role of being the teacher, being the student, being humble, being open and curious. So as we go on and progress in these podcast episodes, we'll have a chance to share a lot of that, wisdom with people.
Yeah, it's very exciting. And I always will say, be discerning rather than skeptical, because if our mind is closed, then it's closed to the beauty and the richness of life. And so we can be very discerning, yes, but let's drop skepticism, because that leads us nowhere. We can't grow from skepticism because we're closed to anything new. And yes, we'll be opening many doors and keeping the tent open for our listeners. So thank you, Robin. Just finally, can you share a practice that you have that's really influenced you or impacted you in a way that maybe our listeners can really get some benefit from it?
Sure. Well, my favorite practice is gratitude. I just think that it's the most transformational, powerful practice that brings us back, no matter how negative things are outside of us in the world, no matter how stressed we're feeling, no matter how much we're feeling victimized, traumatized, life is really challenging. It's really hard. I'm not minimizing or, it's real. Like, people come to me with real challenges.
Mm.
And when we take time to come back to a place of what I'm grateful for in this moment, there are always 100 things right at your fingertips in any given moment that you could find to be grateful for. And remembering as an actual practice, I do this daily. So I have a morning and a bedtime gratitude practice. I wake up with gratitude for being alive, for breathing, for my warm, cozy bed, for my eyes opening, for my body functioning, for a brand new day, that my eyes can see the sky, that I'm hearing birds chirp. I mean, I can be grateful for 100 things in the first minute of being awake. And I am. And I am. And before I go to bed, I have a journal by my bedstand. And I take time every night to write some of the things in this day in particular that I was especially grateful for. And those things usually look like, I'm grateful that I had the opportunity to do meaningful work with people. I'm grateful that I spoke with my son today, or that I met with this friend and we reconnected, or that I had this great conversation with a fifth grader about, something spiritual. I'm grateful for, like, I took a walk and I saw this beautiful bird land in front of me. I mean, grateful for good food, like anything that in this day stood out as like, wow, this made today a day that I was grateful for. So to me, I've been doing this practice now for 7 years. And like, as like religiously, I'll use that word loosely, but you know what I mean? Like regular, consistent daily gratitude practice. And it's the happiest 7 years of my life. So I think that there's a correlation there, right? We can train ourselves to be grateful, or we can train ourselves to be negative and cynical and angry and bitter and resentful. And so I'm training myself to be grateful every single day.
Love that. Training myself to be grateful. I think that is a beautiful sentence on which we'll end today. Thank you so much, Robin, for being so open and sharing your wisdom with us. And we will be with you all very soon for our next episode. And you're going to be interviewing me next. So I better get ready for that.
It.
Thank you so much, Robin.
Thanks so much.